The metaphor ReFantazio journey begins by asking the audience to consider the power of fantasy, and its exploration of that topic did incredibly well. On its release day, it sold over 1 million copies, and went on to be recognized by the Game Awards, and, most recently, be recognized by the Japanese government's Agency of Cultural Affairs. For many, many people, Metaphor left a huge impact and exceeded their expectations. It was their RPG of the year, their game of the year. But of course me, forever being the contrarian, did not feel the same way. When I did my best of 2024 video, Astrobot was my game of the year. Not because I disliked Metaphor, but because I hadn't played it yet. I'd only played the demo and it didn't leave a strong impression on me. In fact, the impressions it left on me led to one of my most controversial videos yet. Even though I had several issues with it, I said I was open to being proven wrong after experiencing the full game. So after hours, and hours, and hours of playing Metaphor, scrubbing through terabytes of footage, and reading the relevant literature, I bring to you my full review of Metaphor ReFantazio. This is not a spoiler-free review, let me just make that immediately clear. My aim here is to cover the entire plot, and I will not be holding back. I'll essentially be summarizing the plot as I share my thoughts on the game's events, and I'll be expanding on my thoughts in later chapters. But occasionally, I will skip over some details in an attempt to keep things concise, so if you're prepared for that, then by all means let's begin. Metaphor ReFantazio takes place in the land of Uchronia, a world that's divided into 8 tribes. The Clamars, the Rysant, the Ujif, the Nydia, the Parapus, the Ishkia, the Rogues, and the Mistari. But there is also a 9th tribe, the Elda. While discrimination is not foreign to the other tribes, the Elda tribe is one that is largely looked down upon by the others. The story immediately begins with the death of a monarch. Luis Guiabern kills the king in his bed. With the prince being dead, there is no heir to take the late king's place. This leaves the question, who will take the throne next? Meanwhile, on their way to Grand Trad, the royal capital, is a young elder boy named Will and a fairy named Gallica. These two are members of a secret resistance. Their mission? To deliver a message to their contact in the military. In truth, the prince isn't actually dead, but remains comatose after being struck with a deadly curse. His body is being hidden away by the resistance. Sorry, I've just gotta pause for a second, because it's driving me crazy how spot the main character this guy is. The heterochromia, the headband, the fit. It's cool, but is he about to walk the runway or something? Like, yes, Will slay. Sorry. Discrimination is pretty explicit in Metaphor. Before even getting to Grand Trad, Will is picked on for his tribe by bandits. One of the first things you see in Grand Trad is a Parapus being publicly hanged for misuse of an igniter, and as you walk around the capital, no one is shy about making comments about your tribe. We get some brief appearances of major characters, we're introduced to this very unpleasant man named Captain Klinger, and you get to name the main character. Unlike the Atlas titles that most are familiar with, this game's main character and yourself are separate. There is still a role-playing element, but the game makes it very clear that the main character is a character on his own journey, and that you are the one guiding him. After signing up, the recruits are to be sent to a training fort north of Grand Trad, but not before some casual racism appears again. The night before they head off, we learn that the elder village that Will hails from was burned down, and we get our first look at a fantasy book that Will received from the prince. It's a book that depicts a utopia, a world with safety, security, and one that's free from discrimination. It's a complete opposite to the current state of Uchronia. It's a world that the prince hopes to achieve. We arrive at the northern border fort and are properly introduced to Leon Stroll, a former nobleman from a countryside village named Halia. Things immediately go wrong. A dying soldier crawls in from the fort, and Klinger, being the coward that he is like, nah, you guys go check it out first and I'll call for help. Spoiler alert, he doesn't. All of the soldiers at the fort are dead and only humans remain. Yes, these creepy abstract egg and teeth monsters are actually called humans. See, if you're cultured like I am, then you know that a lot of these creatures are actually taken from Hieronymous Bosch's Garden of Earthly Delights. A lot of the human monsters are from Bosch's work, such as The Last Judgment, The Garden of Earthly Delights. I didn't actually know that when I first started playing. I think it's a pretty cool fact. It's here that we get our first look at Metaphor's combat system. Similar to Shin Megami Tensei, Metaphor's combat operates on a press 10 system. For the sake of brevity, I'm not going to talk about it all right now, but it's very satisfying. Another human awaits Stroll and Will at the top of the fort, and it proves to be way too much for them as they are. But in the face of adversity, Will chooses to power through and awakens to his archetype, the Seeker. In this world, when people want to use magic, they primarily use an igniter. They can take many different forms. Sometimes they're little wands, sometimes they're collar-shaped. It's what this lady tries to sell you at the beginning, and magla is essentially the fuel for that magic. Magla is something that is born from anxiety, and you'll hear the characters use those two words a lot, and I mean a lot. I think at this point in the game, all you really know is that there's magla in the air produced from strong emotions, and that the magla is the fuel for the magic. With an archetype, you don't need an igniter. The power of an igniter is nothing compared to an archetype. I'm very familiar with the mainline Persona games, so I like to think of them as just, well, personas, creatures that the characters summon after overcoming an emotional hurdle or standing up to something. In actuality, archetypes are heroes of the past, and whichever one is summoned is that person's ideal version of a hero. So Will's is the Seeker because he's journeying ahead, and later when Stroll awakens, his is the Warrior because he's a strong and courageous man who stands up for others. Anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself. With that power at hand, Will is able to use magic without its usual conduit and defeats the human. After the battle, we meet the Resistance's contact in the military, Grius. I just want to get this out of the way real quick. Grius is one of the most badass looking characters in this game. This design, so f***ing good. The message to Grius is finally revealed to us. Avenge the king and kill Luis Guiabern, the supposed curse caster. We also get teleported to a place called Academia and have our first meeting with Moore, the author of the fantasy book. This guy appears a lot in the story. Okay, you see what I mean? Is it Vogue Fashion Week or something? Those heels. I'm not against it, Slay Queen, but it's so unexpected for the setting. Anyways, this guy appears a lot in the story and he's a very important character. I think he's like a scholar of magic and science. Because of how often you see him, I'm not going to talk about him much unless it's actually relevant. Important thing is that he just wants to help Will with mastering the archetypes. Grius' plan is to kill Luis at the royal funeral. They cut through an abandoned mine to get back to Grand Trad without raising suspicion, but when they get to the mines, they find soldiers waiting to kill off any deserters. It is then made clear that Klinger orchestrated this, and willingly sent soldiers to their deaths to send a message to the public, that the current King's Guard is useless and needs to change. Unfortunately, this isn't the first time that such a tragedy has occurred. Stroll's home village Halia was left to burn after a human attack, and with that, we get our second awakening. Very cool. Upon escaping the mines, Grius tells us about the night when the prince was cursed, and we get a little anime cutscene demonstration. We're introduced to Fabienne and to one of my top 2 characters in this game, Maria. She's Grius' daughter, and she's adorable. I love her. That's about maybe 4 hours of gameplay. A lot has happened already, but let's just press on to the day of the royal funeral. Luis is quick to interrupt the funeral, descending from his skyrunner like an angel. I wanna be Griffith. Immediately, this man just causes chaos. He insults the king, forces everyone to confront the human threat, and basically declares himself as the only one fit to rule. I mean, what better time to get people on your side than a mass gathering in the royal family's name, where seeds of doubt have already begun to flourish. And then, the royal palace ascends, showing the late king's face carved into its underside. The king's spirit speaks to them, saying that in his absence, he will provide the people with a king of their choosing. Whoever has the people's favor when he passes on will become the next king of Uchronia. Anyone can become king, basically. Amongst the chaos, Grius goes in to assassinate Luis, but the king's magic traps him in place, and just like that, the most interesting looking party member is dead now. The king's magic is quite a significant barrier for the party because it'll basically protect anyone who's popular, and that means that trying to harm someone like Luis is pretty much impossible. So at this point it's like, well, damn, how are they going to lift that curse? Luis's Skyrunner then blasts at the cathedral, and his necromancer Zorba starts raising the dead to attack you. We then meet Hulkenberg, one of the royal knights formerly appointed to the prince. She joins Will and Stroll to find Zorba and to help the civilians trapped in the cathedral. With the main path to the cathedral now being blocked, the party uses an alternative path through the mausoleum. It is there that Grius' reanimated corpse blocks the way. Feeling hopeless after failing to save the prince, Hulkenberg is prepared to die at Grius' hand. But Will saves her, telling her that the prince is still alive. And that leads to our third awakening. After the fight with Grius, we're now given the opportunity to use our free time as we like. You can do the dungeon, various activities around town, or ride your sword. What the hell? Yo! If you do the dungeon, you have some silly tiffs with Zorba, and he reanimates the human corpse in front of the cathedral before killing himself. In order to take control of the situation, the Sanctus Church announces the tournament for the throne. Participants embark upon a grand tour of the 3 allied nations' capitals while undertaking trials. Their first trial is to find a monster's head and bring it to Oceania's capital, Brilehaven. And because the party needs to find a way to get close to Luis, they agree that Will should enter the tournament in the prince's name. If they want any chance at killing him or finding a magic formula for the curse, it's their best bet. More important characters show themselves here. We meet Bardin, the guard captain of Martira, who begs for your help in capturing Hieronymous, a criminal that's supposedly been kidnapping children. And we also meet Gladel. What the f*** is that outfit, man? But more importantly, we get one of the best moments in the game, a performance of overflow harmony from the glamorous songstress Lady Juna.
Far away sky, blue and clear, echo my wish, so that all may hear. One and all born to this land, as here we stand, let us greet the rising dawn, hand in hand.
Sorry, I really love this song. The leading candidates for the throne are introduced. First up is Sanctifex Forden, a leading figure of the Sanctus Church, who's very close to the king before he died. Then we have Godot, also part of the church. He's basically Forden's right-hand man. And then there's Gladel, the cringy idiot from earlier. He's one of Luis's men. There's a bunch of other candidates here that aren't that important. They all have some questionable motives for joining. I mean, do I even need to say anything here? Look at this guy. And of course, when Will steps forward as a candidate, everyone starts calling him slurs. The party needs a method of transport to properly start the tournament, but luckily we're introduced to Hulkenberg's friend Nuris, who literally crashes into the competition with his gauntlet runner.
What now? Isn't he a marvel, chums?
You don't! You nearly brought down the cathedral! Have a care. It was bad enough when Luis did it the first time.
And with that, they can now journey to Martira for their bounty. So, we're about 5 hours into the main story now, maybe about 8 hours gameplay wise. I think it's a good time to pause and discuss. Already that's a lot of gameplay, a lot of important characters, plot points, and fighting. This game is initially very intimidating, or at least it was for me. Oh my god. Fuck off, fuck off, fuck off, fuck off. It's tracking me. It's tracking me. Even with my familiarity with SMT and Persona, it was a lot to take on at once. But outside of that, not much stood out to me. I mean, the menus are evidently gorgeous, brushstrokes everywhere, beautifully painted. But then the actual game... Look, I'm not expecting Spider-Verse level stuff or something, but I was just disappointed at how flat the game looks sometimes. What I mean is the character's expressiveness. A good way to demonstrate this is with one of the major character awakenings, more specifically Hulkenberg's. Whenever there's an awakening in this game, the game pulls its usual visual novel style away and plays an in-engine cutscene for you. And while Kristen Atherin, Hulkenberg's voice actress, is just going hard, the character's face is just not reflecting that at all.
Elba, new calling, transcending all oaths. I choose life of my own will!
I have to be honest, it's kinda painful. I want more. I want to see and feel what this character is feeling, and this kind of stuff just breaks my immersion. And honestly, I just wasn't being pulled strongly either way about anything other than the art style. The idea of ascending to kingship is cool, don't get me wrong, but I just didn't really feel that strongly connected to anything. But I took a chance, because this is only 5 hours in a 100-hour game, and the game does get really strong as it goes on. So, let's continue. The party arrives in Martira. Their plan? To capture Hieronymous and use him as their substitute monster head for the exhibition in Brilehaven. Stroll hopes that subverting their expectations like this will make an impact on their place in the competition. We meet Bardin again and Lady Joanna, the holy sanctuaress residing there. Hulkenberg's foodie nature comes out, and the party head to the desert to find Hieronymous after receiving a tip from Morris. Morris is basically one of Bardin's men. But oh no! It was a trap! A giant human sandworm appears and swallows the party. The party makes it out, but not before Dark Souls rolling through its stomach acid, fighting a fish, and being shot out of the worm's arsehole. They reach the sandworm nest and find Hieronymous, who saves them from another sandworm attack. But since Hieronymous is the supposed culprit, we have a few fights with him, momentarily bursting his eardrums in what is one of the funniest moments in the game.
Hieronymous! Come out!
Show yourself!
Kind of nice getting to let loose. Long as I'm yelling anyway.
Luis! You think you're so bloody untouchable, you bastard?
Hey! Big ugly sandwormy human thing! Even Hulkenberg wouldn't eat you!
Gasp! Rejected by Hulkenberg! The ravenous, all-devouring she-beast of the Knight's Order!
Aliquot! The sound of your wings keeps me up at night. Stroll, you think you're so smart.
Enough!
The confrontation with Hieronymous reveals that Hieronymous was framed by the true culprit, Morris, who was kidnapping children for money. Fucking disgusting. Hieronymous already has a bad reputation because of his race and his past with the Shadow Guard. He was a royal knight, but he was stripped of his titles when he refused to obey his superiors. So, with him being a Ujif and being disgraced by the church, it was very easy to pin the kidnappings on him. This leads to Hieronymous' awakening, and now we have our fourth party member. An hour or two of dungeon crawling later, and the reason behind the kidnappings is laid bare. Turns out that Lady Joanna was getting Morris to kidnap the children for her. She was unmarried and pregnant with a mixed-race child, having fallen in love with a man from a different tribe. Mixed children are typically regarded as terrible omens, but Joanna didn't care, and was ready to announce her child's birth. But before she could, the nurse killed the child in his crib. Joanna's family was overjoyed at such a tragedy because to them, an abomination was now out of the public eye. The crime didn't even get investigated, and the father was banished from the city. Jesus Christ, man. Like, what the fuck? That is beyond dark. Joanna was raising this human as her child the whole time, and feeding it with the town's children. And if that wasn't hard-hitting enough, Hieronymous then reveals how his son was mercilessly beaten to death in a Parapus riot, left to drown in his own blood. Joanna offers her own head for the exhibition in Brilehaven, and is detained. The party gets their bounty, but chooses to donate the money to the victims' families. I mean, wow. It was at this point that I was really glad that I gave the game a chance, because that is one hell of a storyline. Introduced to the best character in the game, and experiencing a heavy storyline that explores so many interesting topics. An issue I've had with the story since the beginning is the tropiness and the predictable nature of the plot. And it's not like this section of the game is free from it, but I was happy to see it go that far with its depictions of violence and discrimination, because other games in Atlas's library haven't attacked these issues in the same way, and this whole section gave me a lot of hope going forward. What I will say though is that I don't think Lady Joanna was frowned upon here as much as she should have been. I don't think I could ever understand that level of grief, but what she did was just absolutely abhorrent, and I wanted her to get flamed for it. I guess I wanted more of a reaction from everyone, especially Hieronymous. At the same time, she was clearly insane. Completely irredeemable, of course, but it was probably better for Hieronymous to talk her down and relate his own experiences to her. And she offers herself as the head for the competition. She's offering her life here. Anyway, let's move on. There's still a lot to cover. Brilehaven, the city on water. This again. I hate this guy, man. He's edgy, cringy, and to quote my partner, looks like missing textures in Gary's mod. But don't worry, we have bigger problems.
Preach it, Katharina! You're just what this land needs! You've got it backwards, geezer!
That lad there, he's an elder, ain't he?
Is everyone here Scouse? Is that the... Is this Liverpool? No! No! Hulkenberg also has another foodie moment with the raw fish. Unidentified raw fish. The exhibition begins, and each candidate presents their head to the judges. Godot brings a fish, Glidell brings whatever this thing is, and Forden brings a giant squid. And then everyone's like, yeah, Sanctus Church, our glorious state religion never fails, and then the party presents the Holy Sancturus, and they obviously don't want to claim her anymore. In order to avoid bringing shame to the Sanctus, the church deems it necessary to punish her there and then, executing her in front of everyone. Definitely not the outcome they were expecting, but this gets Luis's attention. Again, very hard-hitting. I like that. Basilio and Fidelio, two of Luis's men, invite the party to the Night Prowler, size them up, and then they send them to Luis's Skyrunner for a formal introduction with the man himself. These two actually appeared a lot earlier, otherwise known as the Magnus brothers. These two are basically Luis's closest men. Fidelio's very rigid and angsty, and Basilio's a bit more toned down, but he's quite similar to his brother. The party joins Luis's service, hoping their closeness to him will allow them to find a way to remove the curse or kill him. Or both. Luis also reveals his plan to kill Forden, regarding him as a malignant tumor, and then invites the party to his soiree. While they were chatting with Luis, Gallica went off on her own to see if she could find a magic formula for the curse. If they can't kill Luis to get rid of it, finding the formula is the next best thing. She spots Juna with the magic formula, but obviously she can't carry that book by herself. Before attending the soiree, you need to clear a path to Luis's quarters, and that basically involves some awkward stealth and some scary battle conditions. Once that's taken care of, you're ready for the soiree. After Luis introduces Will to his men, Will and Gallica sneak off to find the magic formula for the curse. While Will and Gallica are sneaking about, Stroll has a heated confrontation with Luis. Since Luis was the one who allowed Stroll's village to burn, Stroll is eager to know why. He basically says it was to prove a point to everyone, as the king and the church weren't acknowledging the human threat. He says that everyone deserves an equal chance, and that their sacrifices won't be in vain. Alright mate, whatever. Luis's justification pushes Stroll away. Back at the Skyrunner, the ship takes off and sends Will and Gallica flying to the other side. In order to get back inside, Will uses his sword to fly between its wings. And if you're anything like me, you'll fall right off. Oh! Very, very cool moment. I really enjoyed this part. Will and Gallica finally reach Luis's quarters and begin their search, finding a box of magic formulas. They encounter a very suspicious Lady Juna, who urges them to stay silent about her presence there. But of course, Mr. Missing Texture shows up again, and Juna chases after him. Will and Gallica both agree that they cannot let her go alone, and chase after her. While Luis announces his formal entry into the tournament, Will finds Gladel threatening Juna's life, and they fall right into his trap. Because of Gladel's ranking in the competition, Will cannot attack Gladel, or else he'll be killed by the king's magic. Knowing the risks, Will still goes to protect Juna from Gladel, and somehow, the royal magic doesn't kill him. Juna gives him a much-deserved slap before awakening to her own power. When Gladel attempts to land a killing blow on Will, he gets chained and killed by the king's magic, meaning that Will is actually one of the top candidates.
What the hell?
They awkwardly explain the situation to Basilio and Fidelio, and head back to the soiree. So it turns out that Juna was actually a spy for the resistance too, kinda like Grius. As for why Luis even kept her around, he just liked the sound of her voice. Not even kidding, that's the explanation they gave. I mean, she does have a good voice. With the magic formula in hand, the party heads to Grand Trad to visit Rella, Juna's sister. Again, this is another character that appeared earlier but I failed to mention. She's in a lot of these council meetings with the church. She's a healer, a saint, adept at magic, and is just a very kind person. Her expertise in magic reveals two key things about the curse. 1, that the magic will constantly draw on the caster for as long as they live. And 2, that the magic formula they brought is just an outline, and they cannot hope to lift it with that on its own. So the only way to lift the curse is to kill Luis. They can only continue with the tournament and wait for a good opportunity to strike. This part of the game was very fun. Still had issues, but fun. The stealth was awkward, but creative, and a lot better than what could have been loads of combat encounters. I wasn't really vibing with some of the characters here though. Mainly everyone on Luis's side and Luis himself. Gladel is just Gladel. I don't really know what else to say about him. And Fidelio and Basilio are what I expect them to be. Gloomy, angsty, uninteresting, but you don't really know much about them at this point, so it's not so bad. With Luis, his explanation just felt stupid to me. What I thought was going to be an interesting confrontation just resulted in, oh, so you're a cunt then. I can't complain about this properly without more context, so you know what? I'll just save this for later. This leads them to the next trial, to pillage the Mystari homeland and recover their relics for the Sanctus Church. What's the actual f***? I did not expect this game to go there, man. Holy sh**. Something important that I almost forgot to mention, the Virga in Virga Island actually means uncivilized, and that's a name that was given to them by the people on the mainland. At this point in the game, it's evidently clear that certain tribes are favoured more than others, and that's primarily due to the church's influence. The Ujif, the Parapus, the Mystari, the Elder, these tribes are all considered lesser for many different reasons, but the church is definitely a part of that. I'm pretty sure that the Elder tribe being heathens or bad omens comes from their teachings. Same goes for the Parapus and Mystari. I don't think there's necessarily any teachings about the Parapus, but you find out later that a lot of Parapus were lured into igniter experiments, magic experiments basically, because they were desperate for money, and the experiments would either kill them or leave them with chronic health conditions. And as for the Mystari, they have their own religion, and that on its own is a problem for the church. They have a third eye, wear masks, have their own customs and teachings, and the church really doesn't like that. And now, for some reason, they believe that the Mystari's cultural artifacts belong to them. Anyways, let's continue. Luis orders the party to obtain a relic called Dracodios, and the party journeys to Virga Island, with Basilio and Fidelio watching over them. Their journey to Virga Island is interrupted by this monstrosity. The beast attempts to hurt Fidelio, Will and Basilio save him, and they kill it. Upon arriving at Virga Island, the party is struck with an unbearable heat, and they seek relief. And luckily, they find a source of water. I mean, you guys could also just take off those big-ass jackets, but alright then. Will stumbles upon the village priestess bathing herself, and her guards quickly apprehend the party. Basilio and Fidelio manage to sneak away and save them later. Meanwhile, the village is anxious about appeasing their dragon god. The Mustari believe that they must offer sacrifices to the dragon god to avert tragedy, and Yufa, the priestess, is willing to do so for her people. The Mustari are convinced that their misfortunes are limited to them and their tribe, such as the human attacks, poverty, famine, etc. But we obviously know that isn't the case. Yufa's brother Edeni escorts Yufa to the Dragon Temple, but is severely wounded by the monsters there and gets separated from her. When the party goes to the temple to investigate, a tree is blocking the entrance. Yes, a tree. To get rid of it, you have to make a potion later. Fidelio then keels over. It turns out he was just putting on a brave face after the monster attack earlier. They are forced to return to Virga Island. While Basilio looks after his brother, Edeni entrusts the party with going to the temple and saving his sister. This leads to an exploration of what I consider to be the game's most captivating dungeon, with loads of interesting lore about civilizations that existed before. Turns out that the Dragon Temple is actually sitting on top of the ruins of a city. That's f***ing badass, man. The party escorts a very stubborn Yufa to the altar, and discovers that there is indeed a dragon waiting for them. A dragon possessed by a human. Awakening, fight, kill it, boom. You know the drill by now. The dragon takes its true form as the lance, Dracodios. Oh, and there's another fight. Please don't ask me how this is possible, I actually don't know why this happens. After the human is killed, the Mustari begin to see things in a new light. The murals weren't actually depicting a world where the priestess must sacrifice herself to the dragon god, but a world where the priestess fights alongside the dragon god, which is why the dragon's true form is the lance. Again, I don't know how the dragon became that lance, but that's what those murals were actually depicting. The Mustari refused to confront their teachings as long as it gave them a sense of security, much like the rest of Uchronia. I mean, to me it's no coincidence that the Sanctus prayer is closure, you know, how they close their eyes to the truth and erase history. Anyway, with the dragon god's true form being the lance, Yufa can now do what she was originally meant to do. The village is renamed as Etria, and the party prepares for their departure. When the party returns to the Gauntlet Runner, they discover that Dracodios can penetrate the king's magic, and suddenly killing Luis becomes feasible. They plan to create a replica of the lance and swap it with the real one at the next event of the trial, on Saint's Day. Before the party reports back to Luis, Juna brings Rella over to examine Fidelio, just to make sure that they haven't missed anything. Aside from sensing strong emotions, Fidelio seems physically well enough. But before Rella leaves, she drops some very important information. If both parties consent to a duel, the king's magic won't protect them. A festival is held in the name of the dragon god, and everyone gets high.
Sounds. I feel quite. Right?
And Basilio begins to show doubts in following Luis's vision. But more intriguing than that, Fidelio has spotted them testing the lance on each other and wants to report it to Luis. The gang go over their plan once more before they leave for Altabury. Whew, so let's just take another quick breather. This chapter was another really strong part of the game for me. The dungeon, the lore, the characters, the themes, the music, the setting, just everything. Really good. Even the characters that I didn't like had some interesting things to say.
Pretty words, them. But if everybody's free to do what they want, they'll work out their own reasons to be prejudiced. You can call it a utopia, but I reckon people living in it might romanticize our world too.
It wasn't all perfect though. I say that I liked the dungeon, but actually playing it was kind of a drag. It felt very, very long, and I think there were only 1 or 2 save points on this floor that were really annoying to get to. And these ears, man. But overall, very good. I loved exploring the remains of a past civilization and learning more and more about the Mustari culture and the church's effect on them. Unfortunately though, this next part... let's just continue. When they arrive in Altabury, they meet with Luis again to hand over the fake lance. He reveals that if they hadn't succeeded in their task, he would have burned the village down. Jesus, man, alright. Luis aims to kill Fordham with the lance at the ceremony, and he asks Will to forfeit the competition and dedicate himself to Luis's service. And after that conversation with Luis, Yufa understands. This f***er has gotta go. The party devise a plan to kill Luis, and just... look at his little drawing, man. The idea of him sketching this out is just... f***ing hilarious. The Saints' Day festival is split over 2 days. The first is for presenting the relics, accompanied by Juna's performance, and the second is for sealing the relics. Their plan takes place on the first day, during Juna's performance. Stroll assigns everyone's roles. Will and Yufa are in charge of the kill itself. They'll sneak in, position themselves on top of the chandelier, and work together to drive that spear right through Luis's heart. Juna will open the service entrance for their infiltration, and Heisme is in charge of luring the guards away from Luis during the performance. Hulkenberg and Stroll will secure their exit route ahead of time. As they're planning that, Basilio and Fidelio discuss their doubts, suspecting that the lance is fake. But to Basilio's surprise, Fidelio decides not to take action, and Basilio continues to express his difficulties with sharing Luis's vision. Fidelio's inaction proves to be unnecessary anyway, as it seems that Luis already has a countermeasure in place. After finding some teeth and being forced into some annoying battles, it's finally time. As Juna begins her performance, Yufa and Will ready themselves.
Juna's song is about to start. From my fingertip flies a butterfly, how it pines for the moon up high. Fire calls its name, fly to the flame, burning as free as it can be.
Juna's voice is so good, isn't it? So, after a very tense 70 seconds, Will and Yufa launch that spear straight into Luis's chest. It appears they succeeded, but Yufa cannot recall the lance. The party reunite and panic for a bit, before Luis comes to greet them on the rooftop with the real lance in hand. Yes, apparently he just managed to survive. With the lance in his hands, they have no choice but to challenge him to a duel, and Luis delivers the hardest line in the game.
If you live by a creed, show me its strength.
After defeating him, we get this tense showdown between Will and Luis. With Luis's blade at Will's throat, Yufa uses her magic to propel the spear at him once more. At first, he dodges the attack, but then...
Not enough, I'm afraid.
Luis!
A fine blow. You've surprised me. But why? Why are you so intent on killing me?
You of all people should know the answer.
I see now. You were the intruders looking for the formula, I take it. And yet, you have achieved nothing.
What do you mean?
So f***ing cool. It speaks for itself, like. With Luis's corpse laid out in the middle of the stage for everyone to see, they need to find a way to reclaim the lance without raising suspicion. One of Forden's men checks Luis's body and confirms his death, and another finds the lance off stage. The party openly name themselves as Luis's killers, and are praised for their efforts, but Forden quickly confiscates the lance. The party are then confronted by a very angry Fidelio and Basilio, but they slowly calm down and leave them be. What a sequence of events. Everything here was just gold. The music, the cutscenes, the fights, that incredible showdown with Luis, and this new obstacle with Forden obtaining the lance. You know, I don't think anything could ruin this for me. Unfortunately, even with Luis dead, the prince's curse hasn't been lifted, which means either Luis isn't dead, or Luis wasn't the one who cast the curse. Or both. That's right, guys. Not only is Luis not the curse caster, but he's also alive. He kills Forden with the real lance and panic ensues. His necromancer is also alive, and gives us a very unsatisfying explanation for their continued presence in the land of the living.
Anatomy is my speciality. I knew at first glance that the wound was deep, but the heart was intact, so I devised a plan. I would proclaim his death and deceive both Forden and his flock. After that, it was simply a matter of magically regenerating his flesh overnight.
Ah.
Oh, I see. Oh, I see. You know
Not
what?
bad. I guess anyone can just come
Sorry.
back to in life then.
Luis then asks them where the prince is hiding and threatens a family that's been left behind. What the why? Like, what are they doing here? Will jumps in front of them to save them, but then the Magnus brothers run in instead, and yeah. The attack breaks through the shield, and then Fidelio pushes Basilio out of the way. And yeah, Fidelio dies. You know, the impact of a scene is kind of lost on me when there's 3 different people constantly pushing each other out of the way, all waiting to die. Before they can stop Luis, the Sanctus show up to apprehend them, and Luis and Zorba escape. So now there's bigger problems. 1, Luis is alive. 2, he has the lance. And 3, he knows the prince is alive. I evidently did not enjoy this part of the game. I thought it was incredibly corny and tropey. Like, seriously, what is this Mickey Mouse bullshit I'm looking at? But the final party member, Basilio, has his awakening, and I have to say, it's probably the coolest one out of all of them. So it wasn't all bad, but I don't think the quality ever reaches that same peak that it did before Luis's revival. Let's speed through this next part. With Forden dead, the church needs a successor, and they decide on Rella. The party has several obstacles. The church, Luis, their loss of support in the competition, lifting the curse. Basilio suggests that Will should be a double for the prince and impersonate him to protect him. Rella announces her new position to the public, and Luis shows up, stating that the spear's presence in the competition makes it unfair. In response, the king's spirit dissolves the royal magic's protection. Will steps forward and presents himself as the prince, and Luis lets Rella and Will duke it out. Rella is then revealed to be the person who cast the curse on the prince. She suppresses the people's emotions for a bit and then teleports away to the Mage Academy. The rest of the Sanctus chase the party, and Nurus finally manages to achieve flight. The key things that you need to know is Forden's replacement is Rella, the magic that protects the candidates is gone, Will is acting as a double for the prince, and Rella is the actual bad guy. She's the one who cast the curse. Upon arriving at the Mage Academy, you fight Rella to prove yourself to her, and then she reveals her backstory. Forden wanted to stop Luis and stop an Elden monarch from ascending to the throne, so Forden manipulated Rella into casting the curse so they could frame Luis. Apparently, 12-year-old Rella and Luis match each other in stature and magic ability, so it made it easy to frame him. In order to protect her sister, Rella reluctantly did as she was asked, but the spell went out of control and became a curse that would inevitably kill her too. She then speaks to the people of Altabury, tells them that Will is the prince, tells them of the church's assassination plot, and declares her support for Will. She then kills herself and the curse is lifted. Did that feel like a lot? Yeah. Did that feel rushed? Good, because that's exactly how it felt to play that part. It felt simultaneously fast and slow, like an annoying speed bump in the road. It was just, this whole part is just weak as f***. It feels like there was supposed to be a dungeon here, but I don't necessarily mind that because the game is long enough as it is. But this whole part is just odd. It was also sudden. She went from being timid and kind to evil and then back to kind. It just happened too fast. And her being the caster felt off, mainly because of what Grius says at the beginning of the game.
And you're sure Luis is the man you seek?
I saw him in the fray. He was younger then. Younger even than you are now, and shorter besides. I could never mistake him.
Like, to me, it is wild that Grius was 100% certain that the caster was Luis, even though the assailant's face was hidden, and the similarity in stature and magical ability was enough to fool him. Even without a flimsy explanation, I think it was just all too quick. Luis delivers an announcement to the people, challenging Will to a final duel. You fight him, win, but of course he doesn't fall here. Luis twists Will's magla and transforms him, telling the people that Will is actually a human in disguise. Even though he's just spouting pure lies, with hard evidence like this in front of their eyes, the people quickly turn on Will. His reputation plummets. And while all that's happening, Zorba's gone to the Elden village to kill everyone, and he basically succeeds. The prince and the resistance soldiers are all dead. They confirm the truth with the village chieftess, Gurude, and she tells them of the prince's birthplace and his mother's tragic death, harboring resentment towards the king for not protecting either of them. But oh, what's this? Will looks incredibly familiar, but Gurude doesn't recognize him, even though she was the one who gave him and Gallica their orders. That's when another big reveal happens. Turns out that Will was actually willed into existence. The mysterious voice that's been talking over all the awakenings and bonds extracted the prince's soul so he could travel the land. Using the book, the prince's wishes were given form, and Gallica and Will were basically given false memories. This next part is just a giant lore dump that aims to clear up all of the confusing discrepancies. It's long as f***. Gurude invites the party to the altar room to explain the origin of the Elda tribe. Elda actually comes from another word meaning the old ones. and was given to outsiders who visited the village in the past. There were no tribes back then, they were all just known as humankind. A war of rightness came about from the discovery of magic. Anxiety and fear is what produces magla, the magic currency, and the overflow of both created the human monsters. And the survivors who fled the war before they could be— Boo!
Hey!
Boo! Boring! This is boring! Hurry up!
Look, I didn't write this.
Shut up! Okay, real talk though, I'm really sorry for all of this lore dumping. I feel like I'm not even speaking the English language in this part. Let's resume. Magla exposure changed the people's forms over time, creating the 8 tribes. And the survivors who fled the war before they could be divided into those tribes named themselves as the Elder due to the negative connotations of still calling themselves humans. The church's magic igniters are actually magic limiters. They're to avert the destruction caused by magic in the past. The Sanctus Church was originally born of good intentions, hoping to limit magic, but they preached to everyone to close their eyes to the truth, or else it would lead to ruin. They obscured history and denounced the Elder. Guruday also tells us of Luis's past. Luis is also from the Elden village, and his family was amongst the victims when Forden burned down the village. Will then has a second awakening, and from it comes the most badass looking archetype in the game. And of course, Luis's #1 rider is still around, so you chase him. You fight him, he escapes, and he goes to inform Luis of everything that's happened. Luis ascends to the royal palace in the sky, going there to acquire the scepter. Luis also confronts the king's spirit while he's up there, and reveals that he was indeed an elder all along. You get this very cute New Day screen, but Grand Trad is now in chaos, the people becoming blind fanatics. Was that overwhelming? Because, again, that's how it felt for me too. I can't really say much about this part because it really was just a giant lore dump. And while the reveal with Will and the prince was cool, I mean, come on, it's an insanely obvious twist. From the second I heard their voices and saw Will's heterochromia, I knew it was coming, so you'll have to forgive me if I'm not overly enthusiastic about confirming what I expected and being overloaded with lore. The day of the hero approaches. On that appointed day, the one with the highest public opinion will become king. It seems impossible with Will's current standing, but the party is determined to try. I did quite a lot here in this endgame part, and I mean a lot, but I'll talk about it a bit later. What's more important is smacking the out of Luis. Dungeon, mazes, Dark Souls rolling, boss fight, gain support, lore, boss fight, gain support, Zorba. The lore here just explains how the king was swallowed by his grief, and allowed the church to walk all over him, leading to Sanctism becoming the state religion, and Forden having the freedom to do whatever up evil he wants. Anyways, you have a final fight with Zorba, thank for that, and then you find Luis in the throne room. They do the classic, we don't have to fight, but Luis is like, nah, that, and pieces out to the Eye of the Storm. So the King's Scepter actually absorbs the people's anxiety / magla, so that the people don't have to bear its burden themselves, and Luis's plan is to gather it all and return it in full force. And when there's an overflow of magla, only one of 2 things can happen. Either the person overcomes it, like the party did with their archetypes, or they become monsters. In Luis's ideal world, the people are either reborn or become monsters. Natural selection, I guess. So what led to this? What made this man so up? Well, there's only one way to find out.
A proper dramatic do-or-die fight at the very last minute.
The party heads to Tyrant Star to confront Luis, and it's there that he finally reveals his motives. Luis wanted to bring the Elder's secrets to light, to end the isolation of their knowledge. The king, Will's father, visited the village, telling them of his dreams for the world to stand united as one, and Luis believed in his dream. But then, the Sanctus set the village ablaze. After witnessing such pure injustice, it was then that Luis decided on making a world that was truly equal, by forcing everyone to confront their fears. It's his messed up idea of order, apparently. He basically becomes Sephiroth for a bit, and then he takes off in his Skyrunner. Humans surround them before they can chase him, and the rest of the party stay behind to fight them off. And they all die. Will then confronts Luis, but Luis pulls his magic trick from earlier and attempts to turn him into a human again. Refusing to be turned again, Will reaches inside his chest and rips his heart out. Moore saves him at the last minute and then remembers the real purpose of academia. The walls of academia fall away to reveal a modern city, the world he wrote about in the fantasy novel. If Will admits that his journey in the world is only an illusion, then he can stay there and get the bad ending. When Will refuses, Moore becomes frustrated and reveals his true identity. Similar to how Will was split into 2 halves, Moore is actually one half of King Hythlodaeus V, so he's Will's father. Desperate to save his son, Moore fights to keep him in his reality. After the fight, Moore realizes how far Will's determination goes, and entrusts Will with his own power to help him succeed. Will wakes up, the party survives. Sure, whatever. They tell Luis to have the strength to believe, and he refuses. He begins to turn into a human, leading to 2 more big boss fights with him. You defeat Luis, and dawn finally breaks. But then he shows up again, so Will has to smack the shit out of him one final time. And with that, Will finally becomes king. There's a few time skips here, but the game ends with Will going on another journey with the party and Maria to learn more about the world. But before it ends, the credits reveal that the Royal Magic Scroll actually has the developers' names and your name on it, meaning that we all played a part in guiding Will and Uchronia to a better future, and we are told to carry on with all our heart. Hopefully now you have the game's events fresh in your mind. I know that was a lot. As you can probably tell from my retelling of the game's events, there were quite a few things that I disliked or disagreed with, so my conclusion on the story? It's just okay. It's unremarkable, it can be good, but I wanted more than just good. I really thought that it was going places in certain parts of the story, but it's just alright, I guess. The sad part is that it's got some really, really good ideas in there, but they're just buried in like the most anime writing ever. Like that whole ending, it's got a good message, but I can't stop myself from cringing or yawning at this stuff because it's so corny. But the story doesn't account for all of the playtime. There's also several hours that are dedicated to other things, like the bonds, the combat, the dungeons, and the side quests that all play a significant part in the player's experience. So let's start by talking about the combat. If you've been on this channel before, you'll know that my relationship with turn-based combat is in a state of flux. I like them, but I don't. I could be playing this, but I'd rather be playing this. This is the only turn-based combat that I want to be taking part in, alright? I also haven't played that many turn-based RPGs. I've played these ones and finished these ones, but I'm not exactly a pillar of knowledge when it comes to them. So when I tell you that Metaphor's turn-based combat system is probably the best and most enjoyable one I've ever dealt with, I really mean it. Like I said earlier, it's similar to SMT's press turn system. There's a number of turn icons for each side, and each action consumes a turn icon. Hit a weakness or land another attack and you get an extra half turn, allowing you to perform another action. But if you miss, you lose turn icons, and depending on the severity of your f*** up, you can sometimes end up losing all of your turn icons in one action. And when you f*** up in this game, you feel it. Like, I was getting pressed.
Oh!
Yourself together.
Hulk her back! Oh my god! Hulk her back!
And it is very daunting at first, but when you learn it, it is so satisfying. If you do f*** up, there is a very kind rewind button that I just barely used, but you still have to be prepared. The sound design in fights also just itches something in my brain. I don't know how to describe it, you know, the little... And depending on the archetypes in your lineup, you can perform these really badass synergy attacks. In the Persona games I've played, it's always been the one more system, where hitting a weakness just gets you an extra turn, or a baton pass, and then that leads into an all-out attack. I don't necessarily mind that, but something I do mind now after playing Metaphor is being restricted to one persona. In Metaphor, you can assign an archetype to anyone as long as you have the mag and the requirements to unlock it. And with skill inheritance, you can have a really powerful lineup. I found that you were heavily rewarded for mixing and matching these archetypes, and in the endgame, I kinda went crazy on it. I think I was farming for so long that I just went insane and started picking fights for no reason.
Oh, I ran out of ammo.
Right, you suck.
you. Well, you can't talk, fighting the same enemy. Oh, I'm too scared to fight the final boss at, you know, level 99. I have to be level 3000.
I'm not level 99, I'm level 75.
Yeah, you want a nice and balanced experience, but it'd be 70 levels over the final boss. Your game looks like a Excel spreadsheet, okay?
Excuse me? Your game looks AI upscaled because your dumb 1080 can't run it properly. This game runs fine.
Yeah, it runs fine because there's 3 polygons on every character's
Holy
face,
shit.
that's it.
Oh, I can't wait for your next blue screen,
I honestly did not expect to spend as much time farming as I did, but the way the overworld combat works made it so fun. When you're outside of turn-based combat, you can press the left bumper to lock onto an enemy, and when you press the attack button, it closes the distance. And if you catch them from behind or manage to break their little stun meter down without them hitting you first, it gives you an advantage. But if you're a higher level, you don't even need to fight them. You can just attack them and take them out immediately. It's so fun. I throw on some music and suddenly I'm fighting this stupid pot for 10 hours. When I first started playing this game, I was basically playing it wrong because I didn't even clock that you could do that. But once I discovered the lock-on system, my fights were just going like this.
Time for some close combat. Forward! Let's push through! We have the edge! Let's settle this quick!
And that satisfying little crumble when an enemy is low level enough, I love it. But as for the spaces where these fights take place, The dungeons in this game weren't that memorable or enjoyable. I did like certain parts of the main dungeons, but the closest I got to fully liking a dungeon was the Lost City one. And even with that dungeon, my enjoyment mainly came from the music and the setting. You know, like finding the piano keys, the watch, and what I thought was a fidget spinner, but it's actually a CD. But man, it dragged. They were never bad though, just a bit annoying. The side dungeons were the ones that were especially traumatizing, like these towers and this fucking soundtrack. Oh my god, who doesn't love hearing this damn for 20 hours? This stupid dragon. He one-shot my whole party. It was my fault, actually. Anyways, let's talk about something more positive, shall we? In metaphor, the social links are now bonds. What were once 10 plus interactions with a character have now become only 8. Social stat requirements are still there, but overall everything is a lot less annoying. Remember in Persona when you'd interact with a character and say the wrong thing, and then you'd spend ages trying to properly progress that social link? It felt like there was no freedom to say what you wanted to say. In metaphor, saying the right or wrong thing just changes how much mag you get from an interaction, and doesn't actually affect your progress with that character. Which, I mean, thank goodness for that. But after coming off of Persona 3 Reload and going to this, it feels a bit jarring having none of these interactions voiced except for the first and last parts. Especially because the voice actors in this game are really, really good. I think what's more important though is the characters themselves. When going into these social links or bonds, my hope is that the interactions I have with these characters will help me either understand that character more, or just make me like them more, or both. Unfortunately, I can't say that I actually like many of the characters in Metaphor. There are about 4 that I like, 2 that I absolutely adore, and a lot that I just feel indifferent about. With Heisme and Maria, I loved how their bonds explored grief, discrimination, and the importance of teaching our children the right thing. My only flaw with their bonds is that they just weren't voiced. But the others weren't that exceptional to me. A lot of them just reaffirmed how generic some of the characters feel, like with Stroll. I don't mind Stroll at all, but he's just quite basic. He's a good guy who wants to be a good noble, but that's just it. He frequently acts as a mouthpiece for the protagonist, and most of the things he does don't make me feel stronger about him either way. And that's how it is for a lot of these characters, at least in my opinion. I know a lot of people love Stroll, but even though I didn't like many of the characters, I never hated them. I mean, I did dislike, you know, Luis's #1 rider, and that guy who looks like the Gary's mod missing textures, but there was no one on the level of, say, this dumb f***ing bear. This stupid piece of shit. Noncy perverted, dumb motherfucking cunt bear. If you've played Persona 4 and you think I'm going too hard on him, you're wrong. Frankly, I'm not being harsh enough. This is the first popular Atlas game that I'd feel fully comfortable showing my friends or even like my grandma, because there's no weird creepy shit, except for that one bathwater quest in Altabury. There is a part where Yufa tries to invite Stroll to have a bath with her, being unaware of societal norms outside of Etria, but Stroll respectfully declines, like a gentleman. Good man. There's no proper romance like in Persona, but the one romance you do get is with one of the sweetest characters, and their relationship is very wholesome. There are no creepy romances, you know, like in Persona, and even if you don't like the characters, progressing these bonds is never a waste of your time. Doing them gets you more archetypes and unlocks special abilities for use inside and outside of combat, majority of which are very, very helpful. And the bonds can also just be funny. Although if I did show my family this game, I can imagine my grandma going, "Why is that guy dressed like that?" Which brings me to my next point, the character designs. I think that a lot of the character designs are cool, but are just odd. Like Stroll, wow, very cool. I love his design. Hulkenberg, wow, very cool. But then someone like this appears. Or this. Or this. It immediately made sense when I watched the documentary and found out that a lot of their designs are based on or inspired by 70s fashion and designer brands like Burberry and Dior. They're cool designs, but in the context of the game and the setting, it's just, yeah, it's always just felt weird to me. I think something I'm more pressed about is how little they change clothing and the weapons that they use. There's certain parts of the story where characters talk about the weather and complain about how hot or cold it is, but then they never change their clothes to make themselves more comfortable.
I can't take this heat. It's enough to cook a man alive.
Take off your clothes then? It's 41 degrees Celsius. Just take your jacket off, man. Roll up your sleeves. I'm sure everyone in the fandom would appreciate it. Like, come on. Imagine how cool it would be to see some winter outfits. I hope that at least the protagonist design would change more. Even for his coronation, he's still wearing the same clothes underneath. You're a king, man. Your money's up. Throw in some more Burberry or something. Come on. And when the time skips happened towards the end, it would have been cool to see people's hair grow out a bit. In terms of the weapons, I just wish you could retain the appearance of the weapons that the characters come with. Something I adore that was in Final Fantasy XVI was being able to change your sword and customize its appearance. I wish more games would incorporate that. You get to the end of the game and you're forced to use ugly ass swords like this.
Oh my god, that sword is so ugly. It's so ugly looking. Oh my god.
Anyways, I'd like to move on to a bigger problem. I've refrained from talking properly about Luis for a while, but if you stuck around during the story part, then you can probably tell that I'm not a huge fan of him. He's a villain that I expected a lot more from. He is probably the best villain Atlas have had, but he's still not that good. I was initially very intrigued by him, you know? He looks cool, his music's cool, people who follow him are also formed from mixed tribes. My problem is that he's just incredibly hard to relate to or understand. I mean, it's probably a good thing if you can't fully relate to this asshole, but his logic just pained me. Like this part where Stroll confronts him at the soiree.
Have you heard of a village called Harlia? It was the first village to be destroyed by the human menace.
Only because help never came. Are the rumors true that was by your decision?
That is true.
But why?
To save this country. The Fool King and the fossils of the Sanctus Church refused to face the threat looming over this country. An adequately dramatic demonstration was required. Surely it helps you realize that you can protect nothing without power. The natural blessings you enjoyed are not infinite. Few have the luxury of living with no need to struggle and harm just to survive. Our nation would have you believe such hardship is born of moral weakness. So the punished are punished further. It defies reason. All people deserve the chance to fight for their lives with their lives. I am not one to stand idly by, as history has wrought. All their sacrifices, and yours, shall not be in vain.
Strong.
I understand that he was making a point to everyone, but like, you still murdered hundreds of innocent people. What is the own here? You purposefully disadvantaged them by not sending reinforcements to the village and let them die. Can you really say that that's natural selection? And the reasoning for this equality, for this natural selection, like, what? When he revealed his reasoning for it, it just pained me because he knew that his plan was basically going to kill everyone. You know, like how his whole village was basically slaughtered. I guess maybe that was the point, that he didn't have people by his side to push him to believe, and that led to this really messed up logic that he has. But I just didn't like it, I'm sorry. It would have helped if they hadn't hyped him up so much. I remember they kept asking and asking, oh, what led to this, or what could his reasoning be? And when he finally revealed his reason, I was like, seriously? That's the reason why you want to execute this absurd plan? I really didn't like the fake out he had either. Sorba giving that eye-rolling explanation.
After that, it was simply a matter of magically regenerating his flesh overnight.
Ah. Oh, I see.
I mean, look, I know it was obvious that Luis was going to live, but which of these deaths is more memorable to you? Having a one-on-one with Luis and him getting impaled through his back before falling through glass right into the middle of a stage, or Luis turning into an abomination and then being slain? Nothing ever topped that Opera House part, I'm sorry. But at least he was consistent, he never faltered in his ideals, had the hardest lines, and he had an amazing voice actor that really brought the character to life.
I have a new world to build, and you will die in its name.
And he had the coolest boss fights in the game. Look at him, so f***ing cool. Speaking of cool moments, all of the awakenings in Metaphor are pretty cool. Ripping your metal heart out and yelling into it goes hard. The director, Katsura Hashino, said that they target the heart because that's where anxiety is felt the most. So you rip it out to tell your heart to try its best. But I always thought of it in a different way. It's this incredibly ballsy and courageous act. I mean, targeting your heart, one of the most vital parts of the body, and ripping it out would take a lot of strength. And then there's also the fact that the heart is a microphone, forcing you to loudly voice your fears. So putting your life on the line to voice your fears? Like, damn, that's intense. I really, really adore the symbolism there. Best one is Basilio's, by the way, just saying. But these awakenings, like a lot of the cutscenes, are just ruined by the game's technical issues. I brought this up in the Metaphor Impressions video, and it still rings true. This game has a phenomenal art style. Like the UI design, the menus, the portraits, they're outstanding. But when it's peeled away for certain cutscenes, the game looks, well... Sorry, I brought this up earlier, but This scene, Hulkenberg's voice actress, Kristen Atheron, is just going hard here, but then the character's face just isn't reflecting that.
Now my new calling, transcending all oaths, I choose life of my own will!
And it's not just in the Awakenings that this happens. Again, the voice actor is going hard and then...
Why won't you understand? Please, I don't want you to die. I can't lose anything else. Truly,
When we've had Awakenings like this in previous games, where we see more detailed expressions, it's just painful seeing this. I wanted more expressiveness, but I also want to hear the characters talking, which brings me to another key issue. It took a while to grow on me, but I really like the music in this game. It is regularly in my Spotify rotation. It's not something that you listen to casually, like with the Persona games, but that doesn't mean it's bad. On the contrary, it's f***ing amazing. Whether it's in Grand Trad or Etria, or fighting a bunch of f***ing worms and lizards, I found that the soundtrack was consistently good. And the sound design's amazing. Always felt really organic and satisfying both inside and outside of combat, but f***ing hell, the balancing.
But...
Shut up, man. Be quiet. The audio balancing in this game is f***ing atrocious.
Actually, I can't concentrate on what he's saying.
This place, it isn't a utopia.
The music is jump scare, oh my god.
Will you deny that the world of the novel is
I
utopia?
can't hear you.
I spent ages toying around with the settings trying to get it right and it just never worked. The music was always obnoxiously overpowering, and after turning it down, it would be too quiet where it needed to be louder, like with the Awakenings. Maybe the lack of expression or audio balancing isn't that big of a deal for some people, but as soon as I notice these things, it just immediately takes me out of the experience. And sorry, this isn't really to do with music, but this game has issues with repeating and overlapping dialogue. It gets very, very annoying when the characters are all talking at once during battle.
Flare! What?
Wasn't
By
that
the
supposed to
sworn
be a
oath of
weakness?
night. Magic night! Oh, mystic purge!
What?
Surge!
But I thought you hit its
Be
weakness.
neither timid.
But I
should have
thought
done
you
it
hit its
with
weakness.
blade in hand!
Okay, that's really annoying.
Or when the dialogue is just constantly repeating while walking around.
Luis is the only one left, isn't he? Luis is the only one left, isn't he? Luis is the only one left.
Shut up!
Free time in this game can be spent in several different ways. I've covered the dungeons and bonds, but you can also partake in some reading, some people watching, and some bungee jumping. And again, like the bonds, they're all beneficial. Doing these activities gets you more points towards the royal virtues, which you will need to progress bonds. And unlike Persona, where you typically have no clue when you're going to reach the next rank in your intelligence or charm or whatever, Metaphor actively shows you how much you've progressed to the next level in a virtue, which is very helpful and way more satisfying. But these activities also help to cultivate your knowledge about the world around you. Meditating with Yufa helps you to learn more about her and how she's dealing with her current situation. Talking to the Mistari teaches you about Mistari culture and discrimination, like how in Altabury they were forced to convert to Sanctism. Keeping watch with Heisme teaches you more about his ambitions, and cooking with Hulkenberg teaches you that she's insane. Whether it's doing laundry, cooking, or engaging in public debates, these events are not just a means to pass the time and get your stats up. They're engaging. They provide useful context about the world around you and the characters, increasing your immersion. And whenever you're going on journeys to dungeons or new cities, the party sometimes stops by key locations that give you even more insight into Uchronia's past. The only time I thought my free time was being wasted was with planting these seeds. Like, why does it take you a full day to plant seeds? But yeah, you can ride a sword, so that basically cancels out any flaws. So, I think I've talked a lot by now about Metaphor, but sorry, please just humour me for a bit longer. In several parts of the game, Will shows the fantasy book to other characters, Moore's Utopia novel, based on the world before. It describes a world where all are equal, where the people choose their sovereign, where the people are free to express themselves and believe what they choose to believe. Moore and his book are actually based on Thomas More and his book, Utopia. It's a satirical book that's split into two parts. The second part is the part that actually talks about the Utopia, but the first part contains key discussions too. The author, Thomas More, is a character in the book who is introduced to a man named Raphael Hythlode. sound familiar? Because there are quite a few similarities and differences between the game and Thomas More's Utopia. The map of Utopia is incredibly similar to the game's map of Uchronia. The first part of the book contains discussions of capital punishment, more specifically thieves being sent to the gallows. In the beginning of Metaphor, one of the first things Will sees upon entering Grand Trad is a Parapus being hanged for misuse of an igniter. The Utopians are tolerant of other religions, but look down upon atheism. Music holds strong meaning for the Utopians. In the book, it's described as something that affects and excites our senses with a hidden but unmistakable force, such as the power of music. And later on, they describe the music played in their places of worship. Whether the words of the prayer are supplicatory, cheerful, serene, troubled, mournful, or angry, the music represents the meanings through the contour of the melody so admirably that it stirs up, penetrates, and inflames the minds of the bearers. Both of these quotes immediately bring Juna to mind. It speaks to the power of expression in different forms, notably song in Juna's case. Obviously, the Utopia in Metaphor is way more desirable than the Utopia in Utopia, but while the actual book is about a man telling us about Utopia, Metaphor is all about taking action to make that utopia. Taking that first step forward, making moves to change things even in the face of adversity. A big theme of the game is determination, facing your anxiety, helping others, moving onward towards a better future. And it explores the many different ways that anxiety can sprout for all of us, and our ways of overcoming it, both good and bad. My favourite thing about Metaphor was not only the level of prejudice that it was willing to show, but its self-awareness. It is consistently aware of how hard it is to achieve a better world.
Still, I don't imagine this would turn out well in the real world. Does a decision made by the people guarantee it's right? Tribal squabbles aren't always political. Take us Clamars, for example. We're the majority, and the tribe of the royal bloodline besides. That privilege can make us insensitive. A problem with no easy solution, I fear.
But it encourages us to try, because honestly, that's the only thing we can do.
If we are to create a utopia rooted in our world, faith is not enough. We must move onward and take action as allies.
If there is yet any value to believing in something beyond us, prove to me that fantasy has the power to color reality.
Note the choice of wording there. Color reality, not change reality, but touching it and providing a form of solace. There's actually several moments like this inside and outside of the book readings that just catch you off guard because it's like, damn, I didn't expect them to bring that up. But the sad part is that those first few hours of the demo don't do it justice. It takes a while to pick up, and it takes a long time to get to its best parts. And it's really easy to feel tilted by all of the lore dumping. I put a lot of hours into this game and spent a lot of time writing the script and attempting to make the story more digestible. But even with my familiarity with it, I still get a headache when trying to recall certain parts of this game. I do have a lot of issues with Metaphor. I think the dialogue is corny. The story and characters are very tropey. I didn't like Luis as much as I wanted to. I think the game is also too long and spends a lot of time repeating itself, and very often are its best messages wrapped up in this terrible, cringy dialogue. But its messages are so important, especially with the current state of the political climate and the world being the way it is. It discusses a lot of real-world issues with a surprising level of depth. I'm not gonna act like playing Metaphor suddenly solves all of our problems or anything like that, but media has always been about escapism, and when you have a piece of media like this that pushes people to try and to be socially aware, it might push them to try and challenge their thoughts in the real world too. It definitely didn't hit me as hard as I wanted it to, the cringy dialogue being a big part of that, but I can appreciate how important this game is for a lot of people, and I think that for many people, it will provide a much needed escape and inspire them to keep moving forward. Before I give my final score, if you've made it this far into the video, thank you so much for watching. This video is my longest one yet and took ages. It was so strenuous that it literally put me in the hospital. So seriously, thank you. We have a Discord server now that I keep forgetting to promote, so yeah, link in the description. With the self-promo over, I think it's time to give it a score. Metaphor ReFantazio surprised me in many ways. As a hack and slash fanatic with no patience, it deserves its flowers for pulling me in for as long as it did. It has its issues that I've discussed for way too long now, but it's worth playing, even if turn-based RPGs aren't your thing. 3 out of 5.